I don't know.
You have the buttons.
I have the button here.
I see live everywhere. I think we're
Okay.
live.
I'm just an AI avatar.
You are.
Yeah.
Should we get started or should we just give a minute?
I think we get
I don't
started.
know.
All right.
We got a lot of content to go through. A lot of excitement.
All right,
Let's do it.
welcome. So this is audience experience optimization presented by Ndevr and Kinsta. So before we get to further, we'll introduce the speakers first. I'm Mickey Huang, CEO and co-founder of Ndevr. I'm going to be the host of this talk. And Matt, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Matt Dorman. I'm president of Ndevr and co-founder along with Miki.
And Roger.
And hi, I'm Roger Williams. I'm the partnership manager for North America at Kinsta, and I'm super excited to be here. Hi.
I was actually expecting a little more explanation than that, but yeah, I started it. Sorry.
I followed your role. Like you're telling us what we're supposed to be doing.
This is very scripted, everybody, just so everyone's aware. We've been practicing.
Do you want my whole life story? I mean, I could fill the 30 minutes if you'd like.
No.
Sure.
But yeah, this talk is to kind of give maybe 35 minutes. Hopefully we can cover it all within those minutes. And wanted to introduce so we didn't go distracted too much, and I'll jump right in. So before we explain what audience experience is, you might be wondering, what is audience experience? So it's actually part of Ndevr's 3E framework. It's 3 key experiences, what we called is 3 framework. So it's audience experience, creator experience, and developers experience. So audience experience is pretty much what you see, feel, and interact on the front end of your website. And creator experience is pretty much the back end, editorial and creators, content workflow, content publishing workflow, anything related to that is creator experience. And developer experience is like an engine room. So the technical foundation of that powers your website. So pretty much DevOps, code related, feature development, and anything related to that is developers experience. Why it's key, important components of making a resilient platform is that your platform is like a 3-legged stool. So audience experience, developer experience, and creator experience has to all work together and also individually have to be strong to make sure your platform doesn't tip over or like have issues or doesn't scale or not secure. So it's just like the 3-legged stool. If one of the legs is weak, it's going to wobble and tip over. So that's why we think that all 3 experience has to work coherently together to make the truly resilient platform. So audience experience is one of the key ones, and I wanted to highlight and focus on that today. So why is it important though? Why is it important to optimize your audience experience? Is we wanted to kind of relate to the actual impact on the business side. So impact on revenue. So it's pretty much one of the biggest things that you concern as a business owner or anyone at C-level or anyone who's working on your business pretty much. So load time means lost sales. So to put it into the actual perspective of in real numbers, 1 second delay of page load time can result in 7% deduction in conversion. And for companies like Walmart, that are retailer, that's online e-commerce store, they found that 1 second improvement of page load time, their conversion increased by 2% in real dollar amounts. So they were doing 10 million in revenue, for example. That means that 1 second of improvement increased $200,000 on revenue. So conversely, downtime is a revenue killer, especially during peak season. There's a Black Friday coming up and holiday season coming up, and there is potential peak on your traffic on your site. So downtime could cost. So it was projected that this Black Friday downtime will cost retailer estimated $675 million right now. And then to kind of give you a real example that happened is that J.Crew lost $775,000 in 5-hour downtime. And Costco lost $11 million in 24 hours of downtime. So it's pretty significant impact. And also, your audience experience impacts your brand image and customer trust. So first impression matters, you know that. But what does it really mean? That 47% of customers expect your website to load under 2 seconds. And I know the industry standard for the longest time was 3 seconds, but now it's even shorter. So people's attention span is getting shorter and shorter. So now people expect 2 seconds or less for your page to load. And security breaches erodes trust. So 81% of customers will stop doing any business for the company that's known to have security breaches. I mean, obviously, that's kind of like, if you are one of them, you probably would be part of what's 81%. So this is why the audience experience for your website is very important. And then optimizing it is also very important. So we'll cover 4 key areas. These aren't the only areas to improve your audience experience, but it's a baseline of key areas. So we wanted to cover these first. All right, start with core web vitals. We hear this term a lot, and many business leaders aren't sure what it actually means for their bottom line. So Matt, can you break down core web vitals in plain English? What are we actually measuring, and why should CEOs and CMOs care about these metrics beyond just Google rankings?
Yeah, the actual terms are complicated, and even like the 3-letter acronyms. Roger was making fun of me earlier because I can't remember them all the time. But if you think about it from a user's perspective, right? Google is basically trying to say, because they used to say performance was based on page load, but that didn't really mean anything, because page can load, but they have things like they call it content layout shift. So if you've ever watched a page load in and then things are moving around, like the logo shifts around, the navigation shifts around, that's a layout shift. So it's a really jarring experience from an end users, because obviously the page isn't loaded yet. So they put these 3 metrics in place to basically give the idea of, when a user's looking at the page, what's the most optimal for them to start engaging with it. So that's the simple way of putting it, I guess. The actual metrics are really just scales of how you improve all 3 to get to the perfect level.
So from development perspective, what are the most common issues you see that hurt these scores, and what's your approach to fixing them?
Bloated WordPress themes are the worst thing, I would say. I mean, that's the easiest area to like critique, I would say. And not just WordPress, like any theme out of the box almost that has a bunch of extra features added to it, right? Like a bunch of sliders and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I only get exposure to the few sites that we work on, and I know Roger Kinsta sees it across the board. I don't know if you guys get complaints at Kinsta for slow loading sites.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting position for a host, right, is we kind of get blamed for everything,
Right.
because and so that's where it gets a little bit tricky, right? Especially for our support team, is trying to like figure out, hey, is this on the hosting side? Is this on the website side? And then somehow, diplomatically point out, hey, your website could use a little bit of help here. And that's where Ndevr comes in, of course.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is, if it's a front end user experience, it's not going to be your host. Let's be real. I mean, there's things that can be the host if there's like a global outage or something that's causing things to load slowly, but most likely it's the theme. So like things to fix would be fonts. That's the biggest like layout shift thing, where fonts are loading in, but they're loading in last and then they change. So sizing and everything changes around. If you can load things in the correct order, things that are above the fold, so your primary image, your logo, like I said, your navigation, these things that are above that area of a fold are very important to load instantly and first. And no, not really too many out of the box themes will do that for you. You have to do some customizations. There's some plugins that'll help around that process, but I found even those will only get you so far. and they'll help you load certain things, but not the full like first view right away.
Well, that leads to, Roger, I know you get blamed for everything, but aside from the just blame, from the hosting side, how does the infrastructure and server setup impact core web vitals? And what can a managed hosting provider do that a business can't just achieve on their own?
Yeah. So it's a really great question. I think, the interesting thing with Core Web Vitals and the improvement I feel with these over the page speed test, right? The 0 to 100 score, that for everything with Core Web Vitals, it really helps you look at how is the user experiencing the site, not just, hey, am I hitting 100 on my score or something? And so from a hosting perspective, I think the most important thing for people to look at is the largest contentful paint, right, is how quickly it's loading. And so TTFB, or time to first byte, is the number that you're looking at in that. And that's really where the host has like the most impact. And so that's where, the browser makes a request to the website, and then how soon is the website starting to send traffic back? And the host has direct impact on that. That's, how the infrastructure is set up, how the web server is optimized, and the database and everything. And so making sure that number is really, really small. Google is currently telling us like 200 milliseconds is kind of where you want to be shooting for, if not faster. And so a managed host comes in and can really help to optimize and making sure that TTFB is happening really quickly. And then, like I said, with the other things, the web server at Kinsta, we use Nginx. There's others out there. We like the performance of Nginx, and we've tuned that specifically for WordPress so that it's working very quickly and efficiently. And then also with database optimizations and things like that. So that's really where you want your host to be focusing on, is making sure that those components are all set up and optimized. And then obviously, using fast compute, we're on Google Cloud, and, really making sure that things are moving very quickly for you. And then, adding in other things that we're going to talk about, I'm sure, is caching layers and CDN, and making sure that all of those things are up and working. And one thing I just want to go back just for a second on the user experience thing. Jacob Nielsen, of course, everybody's favorite person when it comes to user experience, they pointed out years ago that when they talk to users about past experiences of a website, what does the user kind of think about? Oh, hey, how was that experience? Site speed is something that immediately comes up. And so your site speed becomes part of your branding. And I think that that's a really important thing for marketers and other non-technical people to be thinking about. Users are noticing this, and it's staying with them.
Yeah, it's basically essentially it's your first impression or your longest lasting impression to a brand, where if their website and content is loading slow, you make a lot of assumptions. I feel like unless it's a known brand, they're allowed to have issues for some reason, even though they really shouldn't. But like if apple.com gets slow for a few weeks, no one really cares. But, if some brand new electronic company is displaying and they're getting a lot of traffic and they're, whatever, everyone's going to know that. And everyone's going to remember that, well, if that's a problem, then what are the other problems that they're having?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so to kind of break the misconception, we're jokingly talking about the blaming hosting provider solely or developer solely. It's really the collaborative effort of the team to make sure the developers optimize the code and content, while hosting provider ensures the infrastructure can deliver it quickly, right?
For sure.
Yeah, if the hosting provider doesn't have the tools that the developer needs, that's a problem. And just vice versa. If the developer put in all the bloated theme plugin logic, and it's truly, because the host can only get there so far, essentially. Like it's the baseline. So you have to get to that point, but then everything on top of that is really on the developer or the person that's putting the site together.
All right, let's talk about rum. I actually don't know if they actually.
Did we get to drink on this one? We don't get to drink rum, do we?
Yeah, I mean we're not
early,
doing
Matt.
browsing right now. So,
Pretty early.
Yeah. But I don't know if they
it
actually
is
call it
Friday.
RUM. It's like, it sounds RUM, but maybe not. So,
It's wrong.
but yeah, it's a real user monitoring. It just sounds technical, but actually funny to me. But it's really about understanding your customer better. So Matt, like help me understand. So what's the difference between testing your website in your office versus seeing how real customers actually experience it? And then why does this matter for business decisions?
Yeah, this is actually going against the old adage or whatever, towards the old adage that we're going to test in live. This is actually testing in live. You can't get real user monitoring without it being live, right? So you make a lot of assumptions, especially around performance. You try to get everything tuned correctly. I've done this a number of times where I've done all the steps, made sure it looks like really perfect locally, development environments and testing environments, and the team thinks it's great, and you send it live. And then if you're able to have a tool that does real user monitoring, so real user monitoring is actually what it sounds like. It's monitoring actual end users and giving you results based on the real people. So they might have good connections, bad connections. They're going to get the real life connections and devices, because they might have, I can't even count 70, 80 tabs on each screen that I have on, right? That's affecting my performance. So my experience on a website might be slightly worse than other people, right? So it's going to get all those real people. So if you have a specific audience, maybe you have a specific audience that's overseas and they don't have a great data connection, but you've been testing off of an amazing US based connection, right? Now you're going to get those numbers, and they're going to drastically affect your real user scores. And Google will give you some of this data as well, because they're collecting it all the time through Chrome.
What kind of surprises do you typically find when you start monitoring the real user data? Was there any example of where the data completely changed how the client approaches their website?
So specific around performance, I've definitely seen the largest contentful paint, I would say, being it actually is slower a lot of times than just specific testing. And again, that's because there's so many other things that are processing on a real user's machine versus when you're testing things and you're like locked down to doing one thing. It's not that the site performs any differently, the actual site. It's just the fact that there's so many other kind of variables for real users. They might be, and the other thing is that actually this is a good one where you get a better idea of like if your main audience is coming from Facebook because of shares and things like that. Well, Facebook, it has its own browser, right? It has its own window browser. That's horribly performant in general. So if you start looking at those numbers on the face, and that if it's your main audience, you really have to trim down your website, because they're going to be, if you have a bunch of JavaScript going on, doing a bunch of things, it's not going to be that performant through the Facebook or X browser, or, the various social media companies have their own browser on their apps.
Right. All right. Roger, from hosting perspective, how do you help business collect and act on this real user data? And what tools and insights can a managed hosting provider offer?
Yeah, this is another interesting question, and I don't necessarily have a super great answer, because again, this is getting after the host, right? We've delivered the site. We have a lot of tools to help troubleshoot all of this. So at Kinsta, we have an APM tool, that's application performance monitoring tool. That's not something you necessarily want to have running all the time, because it does use up resources, but it will show you specific queries and function calls and help you kind of see, hey, what's taking so long in your application, and help you kind of determine where you might want to make some changes and things like that. But this starts getting into talking about caching layers, right? So you've got page caching, you've got object caching of the database, you have edge caching, and all of these kind of combine to really help making sure that the user's getting the quickest possible experience. A CDN plays a role here, where you're caching items and pages at the point of presence closest to the user, And that's not just geographic closeness, right? That's also network closeness, right? So there can be congestion on the network. And by having a CDN where you've got multiple points of presence, sometimes there's faster connections to something that's further away from you. And so that can kind of help. But as far as, troubleshooting all of this from the developer's perspective, we've got the APM tool in there. We can help kind of determine, what's happening with your caching. Now you can do a lot of this in the dashboard, but also we have an amazing support team that you can contact at any time, and they can help you troubleshoot what's happening with your site to make sure that your users are getting the best possible experience.
Right. Yeah. So it's really essentially, instead of guessing what's wrong with your website performance, and sometimes even what Matt was saying, that depending on where it's rendering, where it's going to be showing, you need to consider all different things and use that as your business decisions to make smarter business decisions, pretty much.
Absolutely.
All right. Now that Roger teased a lot, so maybe it's probably your favorite topic here. So let's moving on, something that sounds technical, but really about customer experience, caching and CDNs. Like many business owners hear these terms a lot, and I know Roger brought in and introduced a little bit of it, but they might not understand the business impact of it. So Matt, pretend I'm a board of director who's not technical at all. Can you explain what caching is and why should they care, and how does it translate to better business results?
Yeah, for a non-technical person, most people in the industry, whether you're technical or not, you're hearing cache all the time, and you probably assume that you know what it is. You probably have a good understanding. So think about cache. I'm gonna go with the sandwich analogy that I blew up on Boozy Browsing, but I'm gonna probably try it again and probably get it wrong. Maybe I'll put some notes. If you think of cache, it's something that's put all together and given to you. So if you think of it as like going to the grocery store, and so I have to go to the grocery store to get my lunch meat, my mayo, my mustard, my lettuce, tomatoes, like all the things that I want to make a sandwich. Then I got to drive home and I got to put it all together, and I got to put it on my plate, and then I can eat it, right? Like that's uncached. I had to go do all the things. I had to go get it and request and drive across town and come back, and it went really far and everything. That took 30 minutes to do it, right? This is like a blown out explanation. Or I could go to the front of the deli counter and there's these pre-made meals. I still had to go there, but I pick it up and I can eat it right then because it's done. Maybe it's not quite done for me because it's the same sandwich for every single person that's going to get at it, right? So there's no personalization in this sense. But they've done it for me, and they put it all together. So the caching is putting it all together, so it's now quickly deliver, so I can just grab and go. And that's like if you're ever at a big event and there's like the grab and go sandwiches, right? That's the idea there, because it's already all the work was done at one point already for all the things, but you're getting the same thing over and over. There's more complexity around caching because I can now, like, I could have the mayo and mustard at the end of the counter and I can add a little bit, right? And that's like a little bit of personalization on like maybe a really performant e-commerce site could have some caching. But some of the things that are personalized about the user would be, the extra things. And then you can have like the delivery to you, because caching and CDNs can actually get you, Roger mentioned it, they can get it close to you. So I don't have to go all the way to the store. I can go outside my door because I ordered it from Uber Eats or whatever, and like it's there and it's done. So I'm not going to go through the tuna versus, or the roast beef versus turkey, because I messed that up last time and I would still mess it up. But the personalization hopefully was easy with the mayo and mustard.
Well, actually, that is my next question. From development side, what mistakes do you see companies make with their caching strategy, and what's the difference between doing it right versus doing it wrong?
Well, the worst thing you can do is, if you mess up your caching strategy as far as like the personalization side, once you try to get into that and you started caching too much, and Mary Jane and Joe Joe Dane, whatever, like they're getting the opposite things that they're supposed to. And I've seen email addresses displayed. I've seen credit card information displayed, not on sites that I've built, but on like forums and things where people are like, why am I seeing this? It's because they cached wrong and they're delivering it to you from someone else, some other user. There's a lot of performance things that go wrong. I mean, for a host, they hope that the developers are doing really well and we're getting like 60 to 80% or maybe 90% of cache delivery, right? Because that's putting less usage on the resources for the web server. So the better we can do that, right?
For sure.
So Roger, leading to, I think you briefly mentioned CDN. So CDN stands for Content Delivery Network. But what does that actually mean for business with customers around the world? I think you kind of went to introduction to it. And how does managed hosting make it easier?
Yeah, sure. So CDNs have been around for, over 20 years now in different forms and whatnot. And the basic idea, and I love the sandwich analogy. Nice job with that one, Matt. Another analogy that I've used in the past is water towers. And so, you have water towers spread out around the metro area. And when people go to turn on their faucet, it's the water's coming from a closer location. Also, if there's a surge of need for, one particular area, there's multiple water towers that can make up for that need. And so a CDN is kind of the same thing, where you've got multiple points of presence, or POPs. That's the terminology to kind of get a little technical for people. And again, like you pointed out, the hope is that the developers have set up their assets to be as cacheable as possible. You want to avoid, obviously, caching things like credit cards, and I don't want to see what's in your shopping cart, and you don't want to see what's in my shopping cart. So there's some precautions that need to be taken there. Most of that's pretty solved by this point, though. Unless you start really doing some crazy tweaking on the code base, you should be able to avoid that. But getting back to the CDN, the hope is that we can cache as many of those assets out onto the various points of presence or the edge of the network. So when the user comes to look at it, they're able to pull from those points of presence rather than having to go all the way back to the origin server, putting additional stress on that, causing potential bottlenecks and slowing things down. And again, getting back to the original premise of this whole presentation is we're trying to be as fast as possible. And so however we can speed things up, that's what we want to do. And so caching is really key for that. It plays straight into the CDN strategy. And again, having a managed host set up and manage all of that for you is, again, one less thing that you as a business owner or even a developer need to be worried about. And so a good managed host has these things in place, has default rules already in there. So for instance, we're not caching the login page for WordPress. We're not caching the shopping cart by default. You can, of course, go in there and make some modifications, but you want to be careful of all of that. And again, this is where also having a good support comes into place. If you're trying to do some different things and you're maybe having some issues with it, being able to talk with a support person and understand maybe how the host is by default routing caching and how you can kind of play with that, maybe ask them to make some modifications, within reason, to really get more performance out of the site. So CDNs are absolutely critical at this point for websites.
I think you answered. So I was going to open up this question for both of you, but I think you answered a lot of it. So if company invest in proper caching and CDN setup, what kind of improvement should they expect to see in their conversion rates and customer satisfaction?
Well, you talked about the 1 second equates to 10, I don't know what percent it was anymore, but like you're easily going to shave a second off of the rendering side, no CDN versus adding a CDN. It's just instant. No matter how performant you can make a CMS, it's never going to be as performant as a CDN. Like it's magnitudes, like can't even measure the impact there. And that's just performance. I think Roger kind of mentioned, like, when you scale or when you have traffic spikes, it's even bigger because the CMS has to work even harder, and there's people, then they have requests being basically waiting. CDN doesn't do that. Like, it just explodes with, however many requests, it just handles it because that's what their architecture is built for static responses. So yeah, the minimal investment, especially, well, when you go with a managed host, I don't know any managed hosts of like WordPress specifically that don't offer CDN at this point. But if you're trying to do it yourself, adding a CDN on top of that is a small portion of your cost that has to be done.
Yeah, and I think building on that, yeah, I mean, you hit it right nail on the head, right? It's night and day differences as soon as you engage with a CDN, and also have, make sure that your caching is actually working well, right? So if you have video assets, you want to make sure that those are getting cached. Those are massive assets, and having those out on the edge of the network not only is going to make them faster for delivery, but as Matt's pointing out, Black Friday is coming up. When you have 10x, 100x, 1,000x visitors hitting your site because you're doing amazing advertising and everybody's clicking on those links, you want everything to not only load quickly, but you want them to load, right? Getting back to another point that you brought up early on is downtime just crushes your brand, right? There's just nothing worse. Like, oh, I guess they're out of business and I'll just go on to the next company now. So, a CDN plays a massive role in that. And yes, sure, like Matt pointed out, you can DIY this, you can set all this stuff up, you can build everything you want. You can go to assembly code, right, and start writing zeros and ones. But using a managed host that's already doing this, has the years of experience of managing these, has seen multiple Black Friday events, and is ready to, handle all of this for you, is going to be immeasurable, right? You want to be focused on your marketing. You want to be focused on your advertising. You want to be focused on your customer support. You want to be shipping orders. You don't want to be having to worry about all of this technical stuff. It should just work.
All right. So moving on, I know we're at 30 minutes, but then I know this technically up to 45 minutes. I don't want to rush through some of the important things that we want to cover. So we'll continue on it. It's probably going to cover last one. This is the last but not least. But let's talk about something every business leaders have probably experienced this. The moment when website update breaks something important or something else that you didn't intend to break. And how do we prevent this disaster? So Matt, we've all heard horror stories about website updates that crash during Black Fridays or something vital, like important dates, like some random stuff broke because during the high peak hours because something went out. In simple terms, what does incident-proof releases mean, and why is it so critical for business continuity?
Yeah, well, it doesn't mean update all my plugins in live. I guarantee that. That's a guaranteed way of not having incident-proof releases, I will say. So you have to have multiple environments. You have to take the time to do the testing in multiple environments. And that allows you to do automated updates, automated releases to those environments. I mean, that's that's a one thing you need to put in place, just like the CDN. Like, you have to have a staging, at least, hopefully a dev, test / staging, and then a live environment, so that you can do these things in a way that you're testing them before they're going to the live public. No WordPress plugin should be updated in live unless you're ready for the site to go down at any given time. Like, if you're okay with that happening, then sure, click update in live. I mean, I do it, but I'm ready to fix it. Like, I know that it's going to break at some point, and I'm taking that risk sometimes. It's not because I'm trying to shortcut the process. It's usually because there's a major issue that we're trying to debug in live, right? Like, for whatever reason. And that's not a good excuse, but that's like a description of incident-proof releases. You have to have a process to get to a staging environment and a testing and then go live. Because yeah, like I said, the only live testing you should be doing is the real user monitoring. You really shouldn't be testing if a plugin works in the live environment.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think this covers some of this actual question, but I don't know if there's anything to
Sure.
add on it. What's your process for ensuring that when we push new features or updates, we're not risking revenue generating parts of the website to break?
It's testing procedures. So going through automated testing as well as maybe scripted testing. This is where we haven't even talked about AI, but this is where AI can get a little interesting, where you can have AI agents and users actually utilizing your staging environment and making kind of real user decisions on your site. So you can just let it run during a deployment. The simple ones and the more likely ones are you're taking screenshots, you're comparing screenshots. If you're not doing feature update or major design feature updates, that'll check for layout changes. And then all the kind of testing of submitting forms and things like that.
So Roger, for hosting infrastructure side, how do you support safe deployments? What safety nets can managed hosting provide for the business might not have on their own?
Yeah, no, I love this question, and you know, I always think back to Bill O'Reilly, right? The Inside Edition, do it live. I don't know, you know, I'm dating myself here, right? But you know, Matt brings up a great point, right? Be careful in your live environment. Again, downtime is not good. If all you do is business on the internet, when your site is down, people are just going, oh, they must be out of business. So you want to be really careful with this. At Kinsta, we've come up with a number of ways for you to manage all of this depending, and I think there's risk assessment here, right? If you've got a business that's generating significant income, then your risk assessment needs to be much higher, right? You need to be doing staged environments, you need to be doing planned rollouts and taking your time with all of this. With an e-commerce website, there's a lot of moving parts, and you don't want to miss any of them, especially with like a WooCommerce site where there do tend to be more plugins involved and they interact with each other in different ways. And so you want to be careful with all of this. So we've got staging environments that you can set up and utilize and push your deployments to and test there, and then push that to live when you're ready to go live with it. We also have an automatic plugin and theme update tool that does visual regression testing. And so with this tool, before you update a plugin, the system takes a screenshot of various parts of the website and then makes the update, and then it takes a screenshot again. And you know, this is really fast, milliseconds. And if there's a difference, it reverts back to before the update. And so that tool can save a ton of time for smaller businesses who maybe don't have the staff, or maybe, you know, don't have Ndevr on full time for making these updates. You know, if they need to save the money, they can use this automatic update tool and make these updates in the live environment, but with that safety catch that if something goes wrong, it reverts. We send you a message letting you know, hey, we tried to make this update, there was a problem. You should go ahead and, you know, do some testing and figure that out. We also do daily backups. We allow you to take backups regularly. And the nice thing at Kinsta is we're doing Linux containers for all of the sites. So when we do a backup, it's actually a snapshot of the entire container. And so when you go to restore that backup, it's really fast. And that was one of the things that's always blown me away when I came here, was like, wow, the backups, not only do they work, which is the thing you want to make sure you're testing, but they also just happen really quickly, which when you're in that situation where you need a backup to load really quickly, every second counts. So, you know, that's how we approach all of that. We give you lots of options, lots of flexibility, depending on your risk assessments.
Yeah, so this is really about protecting revenue and customer trust, which is two main things that we talked about in the beginning, and making sure that innovation and improvements don't come at a cost of reliability for the business. All right, so to wrap up, I know, don't get distracted by all the shout outs. I know we're a little over time, but then we'll also have a replay later on so that you can catch up on that if you missed the last
Don't we have the audience clapping now?
Oh, wait. So
I
I have
thought you
more
prepped
wrap-up
that
questions.
last meeting.
I don't know. Did we earn the applause?
I was
Oh,
hoping
I see.
so.
I think so.
I do like how the non-technical person answered in more technical terms than the developer.
There you go. Roger gets that.
Even throwing in assembly language and zeros and ones. And
I'm just showing off. I'm reading. I'm reading from a script. I'm reading.
That's well, you're AI. That's right. I forgot we made you AI this time. So
I am hungry now, though. I do want a sandwich. I gotta say.
Oh. Wait, I do have a wrap-up question, like some of the departing questions I wanted to ask both of you. So, looking at all 4 areas: core web vitals, real user monitoring, caching CDN, and incident-proof releases, it seems like common theme is that website performance isn't just a technical issue; it's a business strategy issue. Would you both agree with that?
yeah, that's an easy answer.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
Absolutely.
So
I thought you were going to give us softballs the whole time. What happened?
all right, fine. Like, I mean, these are not that hard questions. It's like very obvious for us. I feel like working together. So for our audience of business leaders, what should they look for when choosing both development partners and hosting partners? How do you ensure that these 2 critical pieces work together effectively?
Well, ask your current one if they've never sent you a link on a staging environment, ask them why. After going through this, because like we've mentioned, if you're on a good managed host, you're going to have a staging environment available. Whether they're using it or not, that's who knows. Like that's one kind of base level, I think. Like the amount of times that I'm coming into a bad kind of we're taking over, yeah, they didn't have a staging environment, or it was never used typically. Like how could you not use that?
Yeah, no, I think to me, with WordPress specifically, right, agency and the host are 2 critical components. There's this idea that WordPress is DIY, it's open source, it's free to download. And yes, when you're starting out, or if you have a personal blog or something, sure, go for it and learn these things. The more you learn about this, the better you're going to be able to talk to the agency, the better you'll be able to talk to the host. But once you have any type of revenue occurring, you should be bringing in experts. So you should be bringing in an agency. You should be working with a managed host. I like Kinsta. I like Ndevr. I highly recommend both of those. And more specifically, you should be looking at them to be really good partners with each other and communicating with each other, so that when there's an issue, I mean, it's technology, things happen. How are they going to respond to those? How are they working together to figure out what the incident response should be? But then also, getting back to what we're talking about with staging environments, what is the process? How do they work together in that? And how much are they utilizing each other's tools? If there's an APM, is the APM getting utilized? How often is that getting utilized to, just double check the work and make sure that, again, the most important thing is the end user. How is the end user experiencing your site? And please, everybody, don't forget, mobile still is important. It is shocking to me how many times I go to a website and buttons are jumping around all over the place, and I'm misclicking on a button because it's moved. That's ridiculous. It's 2025. Mobile first came about at least 15 years ago. Like, we should be on top of this. So I would be hitting up your agency and your host to make sure that they're in good communication with each other. If you're making money on your website, you should be talking with both of them regularly and just doing checkups on, hey, how are things going? What's coming down the pike? What should we be looking at next? How are we integrating with AI? All of these great questions. Just communication is really key.
So this is my last question, I promise. If someone watching this wants to start improving their website performance tomorrow, what's the first step you recommend they take?
Hire Ndevr.
Use Kinsta.
Thank you.
Okay, getting more specific, getting really specific or anything like that. Use some sort of an APM tool, like turn that on right now and look at how long your site takes to load, and start working from there. That's what I would say.
Yeah, and I would say even for the front end, go to Google. They have page test. See what score it gives you. Lighthouse scores. Like if you're getting in the 60%, then that's a problem. If you're not getting, I would say 80 or above, then you need to be looking at having someone come in. Because there are simple fixes. Maybe your hero image is just massive and like, but until you run something, you're not going to know, and it's too many things to look at.
All right. On that note, I don't know if there was any Q&A in here. Well, if you did, I'll follow up, but I didn't see anything coming in. But this is our information on. Oh, so yeah, I'll do the clapping. Okay. Oh,
We
cheers.
nailed it. There were no questions. We answered everything.
Oh, big cheers.
So yeah, Ndevr and Kinsta site. Follow us on our company LinkedIn page and our what's it called, podcast. So we have Media Ndevr, and then Kinsta has a. You have a Kinsta talk, right? Like, is there other
Kinsta
podcasts?
Talks.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we do have Boozy Browsing. We didn't put it here because that's more happy hour. It was the next one that if we're happening it in like a little bit later in the day, we might. But anyways, so hopefully this was informational. Anything to add before we?
No, thanks for running this, Miki.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, thanks. It was fun. Hopefully. All right then. Happy Friday.
Absolutely.
Yeah, happy Friday.